Our guest today on Personally Speaking is the great NFL champion, Matt Birk. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr. Jim Lisante, and Matt Birk joins me now. Matt is the Republican nominee for Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, running alongside Dr. Scott Jensen in the Minnesota gubernatorial election. Matt is also a 15-year veteran of the NFL and is a Super Bowl champion. He spent most of his professional career playing for the Minnesota Vikings. Matt is a graduate of Harvard University with a degree in economics. He's married to Adriana, and together they're the parents of 8 children. Matt's Catholic faith has always been central in his life. He's a pro-life advocate, and in 2019, he and his wife started Unity High School to provide Catholic education in grades 9 through 12 in his hometown of Burnsville, Minnesota. He's here with us today to talk about why he became involved in politics, about his Catholic faith, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Matt Birk. Matt Birk's our guest. I'm delighted to have you on, but here's my question, my first one. I understand the talent it takes to get into Harvard. I understand the talent it takes to be a great NFL player. I cannot understand where the talent or the strength could come from to be able to raise 8 kids. Where do you get?
Well, that's easy. You just got to marry the right woman.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about that. Every weekend when I do weddings, that's what I ask the couples. I tell me why. Of all the people in the world, this is the one. Adriana, your wife. How did you know this is the one?
Gosh, you know what? I think maybe I knew because she just made me want to be a better person. And I think that's when I knew it wasn't about about her or me. It was just like I just felt this desire to want to be better in every way. And I was born and raised Catholic. I've always been Catholic, but I wouldn't say always the most devout or necessarily even for a time not really practicing. But when I met her, it was sort of like the wake up call. I kind of said, well, yeah, geez, I got to start figuring some things out because life is now, it's going to be about a lot more than just me. And so I think when someone inspires you to be better, right, that was kind of the bell for me that went off.
Let's go back, Matt, to that experience of growing up, that family of origin for you. What when you look back, because now you're in the role of being an important parent in the life of your children, what did your parents do right in raising you?
Well, we went to Mass every Sunday, never
Okay.
missed Mass. And we didn't talk about the faith a lot. They found a way to send us to Catholic school, even though we didn't have any money.
Okay.
But they're people of action. They performed the corporal works of mercy.
Wow.
I remember them as kids. They would be volunteering down at the Catholic charities at the soup kitchen, or always, volunteering, whether it be the Christmas wreath sale at the school or the commission of the Little League, whatever it was, just always being involved in the community, volunteering their time. Even though, like I said, we didn't have any money, didn't really have any necessarily the free time to do that. But they were models of sacrifice, of putting their faith into action. And I think, if you want to teach your kids, and we know like this is paramount, right? Like you talk to any parent now, they're so worried about their kids and this culture and how do I raise them and how do I keep them Catholic? And I mean, the number one, I think the best thing that we can do as parents is model it, model the type of behavior, model virtue and character, and perform those corporal works of mercy. I think that's the best thing we can do. That's what I remember as a kid.
That's really important. Matt Birk's our guest. Matt, when you talk about coming from a background that is modest, not a lot of money financially, and then you have an opportunity through the world of sports to come into some decent money, how do you keep balance? Like there was a guy, George Martin, used to play for the Giants we had on the program.
Yeah,
and he now handles people's finances. And he says it's heartbreaking to him to see lots of guys who played in the NFL made millions and are broke because they didn't know how to manage or handle it. But how did you keep your feet on the ground and not be, how did you not have your head turned by money?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I can't say I always did it. I think early on, yeah, it was a little bit intoxicating for sure. And I was very focused on, quote, success, meaning worldly
Yeah.
success. But I'd reached the point where I'd had more worldly success than I ever thought was possible. I mean, I'd signed the biggest contract in the history of the NFL for a
Mhm.
center. I was playing in my hometown, which helped because I was surrounded by people who knew me my whole life. And, they didn't really care what I did. They didn't love me for what I did. They loved me for who I was.
Mhm.
So that definitely helped. But, I'd kind of reached this point where I'd had all this success, but I wasn't really fulfilled. I wasn't really happy, or I didn't have the joy. I was like, I was kind of sitting around looking around saying like, this is it. Yeah. I thought I'd be a lot
Right.
better than this. And, as I look back, I see, I see how God worked in my life. That's when my now wife came into my life,
Mhm.
started having kids. And I think it's important for all of us who are raised Catholic. Um, we're given the gift of the faith, right? As babies, as newborns, but at some point we have to claim the faith as our own. And I was really fortunate playing in the NFL. A lot of people don't know this. The locker room is a very spiritual place. And every team I played on in the NFL, we had a team chaplain who was there all the time. Door was always open. There was multiple Bible studies during the week, a couple study one night a week. And it's probably one of the few places where your workplaces where you're actually encouraged to grow in your faith. Because football is really hard. It's a hard game to play. The NFL, there's these high highs and low lows. And wherever you're at in your spiritual life, I think in your heart, like this isn't real. None of this is real. Like I'm not that good. I'm not worth this money. My jokes aren't that funny. Um, and so, right, we're always searching out what's real, what's true. And but that was very helpful to me to just kind of be around it for a few years. I never went to Bible studies. I was just kind of like, hey, I just really focused on football. And I was raised Catholic, like, well, I already know all that stuff. But then when the time came that I really wanted to get serious and start asking questions and searching for some answers, and just really kind of figure out, like, I say I'm Catholic, like, what does that mean? Why do I still identify with being Catholic if I'm not on fire for it? Because most of the guys in the NFL are not Catholic. So but I'd see these Protestants who are really on fire for their faith, and it's like, well, I want to be like that. And so I really started to dive in on the Catholic faith, and really, I think, relearn it or learn it. What our church is all about, and just fell in love with the genius of it. And so I really say, football, and meeting my wife really brought me back to the Catholic Church, which is the, as I look back, that's the best thing that could have happened to me.
That's wonderful. Matt Birk's our guest. My first arrest at an abortion clinic, I was arrested with a guy named Mark Bavaro, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah, sure.
And I remember him. Then I got really interested in his life and career because he was getting arrested with me. And I remember the Sports Illustrated magazine. He would catch a touchdown and he'd, of course, give glory to God. And the editorial they wrote was, Mr. Bavaro, play football and keep your faith to yourself. And I wondered when because you're like, and I love you for it. You're an unapologetic believer. You're a Catholic Christian. This is who you are. You make no apologies. You are convicted in the faith. But how do you handle blowback from people who want you to be an entirely secular person?
Well, I know what I believe, and I know why I believe it.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time, researching that. So I feel like I'm pretty well equipped to defend it, defend my faith, defend myself in the public square. And I know that, if you're standing up for truth, I know that the Holy Spirit will guide me,
Hmm.
and God will give me the words.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a part of who I am. I can't separate it. It permeates every part of my life, every decision I make, everything I do, how I look at certain issues. And I guess I've got a great support system around me, got a great wife and kids, and men's group, and all those things. So it really doesn't feel like it's a huge act of courage for me to do that. I look at it as, hey, I have an opportunity. I have a platform, and when given the chance, we're all called to evangelize in our own way. But I guess, I don't know, maybe it's because when you grow up the chubby kid who's kind of the last one picked, or you're playing in the NFL or whatever, you're just kind of used to criticism.
Yeah.
And I've been dealing with it my whole life, and so it's kind of like water off a duck's back.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Matt has been running for lieutenant governor up in Minnesota. And I mentioned that to you because you get into politics, there's one very divisive work to get involved in. And to be an active and articulate and unapologetic pro-lifer is really walking a minefield. I don't know if you have an insight into this, but I find myself wondering, since we're going to spend eternity with God and a few years on earth, when a guy like Joe Biden or any number of other Catholics who even once were pro-life decide for the sake of fitting in political correctness to sell out the unborn, I don't know how they look in the mirror and stuff. But you deal with people in politics. What do you make of the fact that in both parties, we have a lot of people who were willing to give away life itself for the sake of political expediency?
Yeah, well, I mean, the devil's pretty cunning, right? And so I
Yeah.
think he's convinced some of our political leaders that they actually are on the
Yeah.
right side of this issue. I mean, I really think they believe that. And so, when dealing with them, I mean, to recognize that that they're confused. They've been misled. And I look at it as, my job, our job, not to just yell and scream and tell them they're wrong.
Uh-huh.
Although that's that's where I always go first. That's my initial reaction. But just try to put the truth out there. And I've certainly spent a lot of time praying about it too. My running mate and I, they've spent about $20 million against us, and
Yeah.
it's the demonizing us. And the only thing that they can keep saying that's so extreme about us is that we're pro-life.
Right.
And
Right.
so you know what I mean, in this specific, in politics, what I've, and in Minnesota, abortion is actually a protected constitutional right due to a state Supreme Court case back in 1995.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is actually, I think, is in a way, God knows what he's doing. So we can't ban abortion, but so what we have to do is really, truly be and do pro-life. Being pro-life and that's not just saying we just want to outlaw abortion. That's part of it, but we are going to have to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and build a system that truly does love and support women.
Yeah.
And I think if women who are unexpectedly pregnant feel loved and supported and have, whether it's financial resources, medical resources, all these types of things that they need, which we are called as Christians to help provide them. Abortion is going to be legal in Minnesota, but we could make it unnecessary, which would be the ultimate win. I mean, and again, the devil's really, really good. Like, right. He's really good. So he's boiled this down into a political issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much bigger than
Right.
a political issue. That's so I kind of like look at it like, hey, here's really a chance for us as pro-lifers,
Yeah.
for one, to educate people of what it really means to be pro-life, people on both sides of the issue. What it really does mean to be pro-life. It's a lot more than being against abortion. But then who's against creating a system where women have everything that they need in order to give birth and be great mothers to their children.
You know what Matt Birk's talking about 20 years ago, Cardinal John O'Connor in New York said, any woman of any faith, any background, any culture who comes to us will get all the help she needs to make the choice for life. And he pretty much bankrupted the Archdiocese in New York because he meant it. We're going to spend the money to make sure that, as you say, no one has to choose abortion. But I think more than just Cardinal O'Connor and Matt Birk, we all need to do that, to offer true alternatives with real support. Because in the end, you're right, it's all about winning over hearts and minds. There will always be a way to get an abortion, but win the hearts and minds. Now, I'm going to go to the controversial issue. Matt was speaking with my friends at National Right to Life, and he got into this issue of rape. And now I want to say, especially because this program is on Sirius XM on the Catholic channel, what I'm going to say now, there's going to be lots of people to disagree with, but um, the church teaching is pretty clear that that child conceived in rape is an innocent person worthy of life. And if you're going to give capital punishment to someone, then find the father who did the raping and do it to him. But to do it to the baby who's a pure innocent is essentially what Matt said. And he's absolutely right in saying that. Matt, you'll appreciate this. I went to a public high school some years ago, and everyone was ready to hang me when I said what I just said now. And then a girl got up bravely at the mic to ask a question. She said, "So we all agree, right, that a child conceived in rape should definitely be like aborted, right?" Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then she said, "Well, I haven't said this in public before, but she said 16 years ago, my mom went on a date that ended in rape, and I am that child. And who of you here in this auditorium wants to say that I shouldn't exist?" And you could hear a pin drop, you know. And she said, "By the way, I'm not Catholic, so this isn't about religion." But she said, "It's so easy to just say, yeah, abort the child of rape, but I am that child," she said. And boy, what a testimony she gave. But
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I have chills when you say that. It's true. Obviously, rape is a horrible thing.
yes,
But light can always overcome darkness.
yeah,
And they always want to, when you're having the discussion, they always want to use instances of rape. It's like, well, okay, what about the 99 other
yeah, yeah,
percent, right? But this is what I know, and this is really what got me really involved in the pro-life movement. My wife was involved. I really wasn't doing much. I was still playing football and kind of just letting her do her thing. And I was being pro-life, but I wasn't doing anything. And I went and spoke at the Archbishop Laurie in Baltimore called me one day and said he wanted me to go speak. They were doing a rally at the State House, and I went down there, and I met a woman who, the reason I asked her why she was there, she said, "I had an abortion when I was 18 years old." And, she was about 40 now. And she said, it just wounded me deeply. And I don't want other young girls to make the same mistake I did. Well, lo and behold, there's dozens of women there, hundreds of women that night that were in the same situation. And as I've gotten involved even at a national level, right, there are millions of women in this country who the wounds of abortion, physical, spiritual, emotional, they're still suffering. And so this idea that if you conceive a child during a rape, well, just have an abortion, then everything's going to be fine. That's wrong. That's not factually true. And, and I too have met people who were conceived during rape. And I think it's an amazing act of love and sacrifice from the mother. And like I said, an amazing way to show that light overcomes darkness. And life isn't perfect. It's messy sometimes, but when out of something horrible and tragic like that, goodness can come out of that. And it's incredible. And of course, we don't hear the stories like that enough in the media.
no, and I want to speak to that because New York Times recently had a whole magazine section on, is there really such a thing as post-abortion syndrome? And of course, the whole article was geared to debunk that anyone would have any emotional consequence from an abortion. And all I have is 42 years in priesthood and literally thousands of women and their boyfriends and men that I've sat with and gone through confession with and seen the pain, the heartbreak, the disaster of the damage done by it. And I want to say to the New York Times, why do you need not only to be pro-choice, but why do you need to take what real people experience, the heartbreak of abortion, and in some way say we shouldn't feel that way? I mention that because you, Matt, not just on abortion, but on all the things that you stand for, the media is wicked toward you. Even something like Wikipedia. I was reading Wikipedia about you, and they couldn't just do your biography. They had to, at the end, explain how you're so controversial because of this point of view or that point of view. They were skewering your own biography against you. And I thought to myself, how does this guy deal with a media that cannot accept him because they cannot accept the principles that sustain him?
Yeah, well,
how do you deal with these folks?
Yeah, I try not to, only when I have to. it just kind of goes back to, and I'm not right about everything. Look, I understand that, but there is truth.
Yeah, right.
There's no your truth, my truth. There is the truth. And
It's so close-minded just to say such a thing.
and,
There's objective truth. Yes. Yeah.
well, so like if you state the truth and somebody can't refute that, then the only thing that they have to do is to, attack you or yell and scream, because that's all that they can do. And so, right, like I think our job is to try to discern what the truth is, and we've got church teaching for that. And then to, when asked, you put it out there and understand. I mean, Jesus said it multiple times in the Bible that you're going to be attacked, you're going to be persecuted, and so in a way, it's sort of assurance that you're doing or saying the right things. But we have to recognize that we are in a culture that is dark. We are in a spiritual warfare. We don't live in I'm sure you've read the book by Msgr Shea, From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. We are no longer in a time of Christendom. I think when I was growing up, I think we were, at least in my little cocoon, I felt like we were, but no more. We are by the media, but we are the hunted right now. And we have to understand that, because it changes our entire mindset of how we approach life, and we have to understand that, like, when we consume news from mainstream media, that's where it's coming from.
Totally. Matt Birk. So I guess, Matt, one of the ways you want to form and shape conscience in the future is by doing something very unusual in helping to establish a Catholic school. Tell us a little bit about how you came to decide to do that and what your hope is.
Yeah, well, my wife, we moved around a bunch when I was done playing. I moved to Baltimore and then, took a job in New York with the NFL league office. Anyways, was looking at a lot of schools and just kind of felt like overall that, geez, even the Catholic schools were just so focused on getting kids into college. Like, It seemed like that was the goal. We're going to get kids into college. And it was like, okay, well, college isn't necessarily bad, but aren't we supposed to get kids ready for life and also eternity? Like, isn't that the main goal? So we moved back to Minnesota, where we're both from, and wasn't crazy about the schools that we were looking at. And there's a part of the Twin Cities metro area where there's 10 Catholic grade schools. There was no Catholic high school. I thought, geez, this is just seems like fertile ground for a Catholic high school, that a lot of these students that were graduating from Catholic grade school were not continuing on to Catholic high school because of geographic reasons, also for financial reasons. And so I just kind of was spouting off one day, like, I'd love to start a Catholic high school. And the guy I was with he's in my men's group. He said, well, you should talk to this other guy who I knew a little bit from the Catholic circle. He's talking about starting a Catholic high school. And Msgr, I'm telling you, it was amazing how it sort of fell together. We met and said, hey, I want a vigorously Catholic high school that really focuses on getting kids ready for life and eternity, And we said, okay, let's do it. And we were driving around looking at spaces to start this school. And we drove by a Catholic church that neither of us had heard of. And I thought I knew all the Catholic churches. It was originally built to have a school in the 60s. The pastor there didn't want one. He fought it, I guess. And then he passed away in the 90s. And by then the archdiocese here wasn't opening Catholic schools. They were closing them. And so they basically had a school with all this space that was being underutilized, and just walked in there and said, hey, would you guys like to have a school? And it was like in a week we'd met with the parish administrator, the pastor, and the board, and we were approved, and we were off and running. And so Unity Catholic High School is in year 4. We do things a little bit differently. On Wednesdays, we don't do any traditional academics. We do we call it Real World Wednesdays. So we try to really do like that experiential learning. Like, here's how you balance a checkbook, or do a budget, or change a tire. Things. We actually teach an art of manliness class and a feminine genius class to our male and female students. But the best part is every day our students walk 100 feet to mass, and
Wow.
and we have an adoration chapel there, and there's a few nuns there that operate a food shelf, and so our kids are kind of there. Our students are immersed in the Catholic experience, if you will. And, it's just been fun to be a part of that project. And watch how God's growing it.
Matt, the majority of parents, grandparents who are watching or listening to a show like this probably won't have a chance to find a school like yours. But I mention that because you hope they're going to grow where they're planted. You had an opportunity to go to Harvard, and you can't think of a more liberal, progressive, woke atmosphere than that. Were you tempted ever in the midst of all that stuff that they're selling to buy?
I don't think so. I mean, I was, kind of naive in a lot of ways. I mean, I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like St. Paul, Minnesota. I just thought everybody was Irish Catholic. And then I get to Harvard and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
The seeds had been planted in me to know what the truth was. I was also very fortunate. I had a couple roommates in college who I wasn't into politics at all, but they were like political animals. In fact, one was from Massapequa,
Right.
the Chaminade High School.
Yes.
And and so I would sort of ask them questions, and then they would indoctrinate me. But they're very conservative, and so I think that helped me navigate those waters. But it certainly is. It was kind of woke before woke was even
it's true.
even a thing, before we even had a term for it. But like I said, I look back, God surrounded me with good people and protected me.
I want to thank Matt Birk for being with us. I mentioned he's running for lieutenant governor of Minnesota and a lot of years with the NFL. But when I listen to you, Matt, I'm reminded of an old friend of mine. Now I know in heaven is Wellington Mara. And when he got involved with pro-life athletes, a lot of people told him, you don't want to go near that. It's so controversial. And he'd say, our whole faith is controversial. But, he said, how do I keep silent on the thing that motivates me? And as he said many times, he said, I'll be on earth, 80, 90 years if I'm lucky, but I'll be with God eternally. And I don't want him to say, Wellington, did you know the truth and not speak it? And when I listen to you, Matt, I hear Wellington again, because you know the truth, you speak it. And thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, no, thank you. We've all got a role to play, right? As we're here on earth, and we need to just embrace that. And Monsignor, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing here with this ministry.
As we end today's program, I want to thank you all for being with us. If you need to reach me, you can write me at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. Personally Speaking is also on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also now on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.